I'm glad you joined me today. We're going to talk with regular on the show, Heather. We're going to talk about martial arts and politics, resiliency, and authenticity. Let's learn how Heather um, turned multiple defeats into victory through resilience, while at the same time using some lessons she learned from her martial arts training. Let's explore how authenticity, life balance, and planning can lead to huge wins if you just never give up. Let's listen and learn how to embrace the transformative power of failure as a stepping stone to your personal and professional growth. I'm glad you joined me today. This is a good one. Let's get it.
Welcome to the Warrior Mindset Podcast. We're your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
So you sent me a idea talking about failure.
Yeah.
We just did one on fear. I sat down with Aaron and we talked through some stuff about fear, which I thought was interesting. But this came up as well, the subject of failure. What made you want to mention that?
Well, I've been writing some speeches to give at events and things like that.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is a lot of people, based on my background, they're like, you kind of leaned into failing and
Okay.
kind of owning it in learning or adjusting or trying new things and then continuing on. So, and then we were just discussing this over coffee the other day. I'm like, even in martial arts, a lot of times you have to like take risks to learn what your body can and cannot do.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a kick, you have to kind of embrace and fall over sometimes.
Yeah, for
Not all
sure.
the time, but you have to like push yourself.
Hmm.
So that's how I
Hmm.
came about it.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
so we've never really talked about. I mean, we've brought it up a couple times, but why don't you, for the sake of the fact that this is a recorded podcast, uh, tell anyone who's listening about your, I don't want to call them failures. I mean, I think you've said that term before, but your
Yeah.
first 2 attempts at running for office. No,
Yeah,
and I do want to add the caveat that you won your last one.
I did.
So talk through that.
Yeah. Um, First time I was kind of maybe not naive, but I really for the first time shared my story and
Mhm.
opened up to the community about, my background, and most people didn't know where I was really from. They just thought I was some like, middle class, upper class woman from Beaufort or something. I don't know. But telling my story, they're like, "Oh wow, like
Yeah.
you're not what I thought you were." And so that was pretty cool.
Mm.
Um but I really leaned into that and sharing my story, my first campaign, and I think it was good to, set the base of where I was from, but
Mhm.
ultimately, I was running against a guy who was well funded and had the backing of, he's a friend of mine now. I actually knocked his door this weekend. But he had funding and support from the, in quote establishment, I guess.
Right.
And so, I was really going up against a great odd,
Mhm.
running in that race. And it would have been even greater in the general.
Mhm.
But yeah, I didn't win. It was kind of close, but it was I didn't see it as a failure though. I was really proud of what I did,
Mhm.
and I think I changed the conversation in a lot of ways. And I'm proud of that. So, yeah, I was kind of sad for a little bit, but I was like, you know what, F it. Let's just keep moving. And I was involved in that general election for help my girlfriend who's running for Congress in Low Country. I did a bunch of different things just to learn more and help. And then I ran again, and that was for city council, lost. And then that night, I always had the greater good of why I was doing it, but that night I knew I wasn't going to make it to the runoff.
Mm.
So I called my friend Tyler Bailey, who's running for city council again. I called him. I was like, listen, like, I'm not going to make the runoff. He's like, you don't know that yet, Heather, because we were both friends at that point.
Mhm.
I respect him a lot. He's like, you don't know that you could still make the runoff. I'm like, listen, I know the numbers. They're not going to work. I want to help you.
Yeah.
He was like, wow, like already?
Yeah.
But it was like 9 o'clock and I was offering my support. I was out like a day later knocking doors for him. So I kind of, used the platform not to just obviously learn that failure, but I like immediately pivoted, used it and helped someone else.
Mhm.
That's
That's
how I
cool.
use my failure. I'm like, this is what I learned. This is what I'm talking to people about. He ultimately did not win in the runoff, but he's running again, has a great chance. So good for him running again. He's failed and
Sure.
he's running again too. So I'm like, go get it. Um, and then the third time I was, I had learned like, identity politics doesn't really work. People don't care so much. I mean, it's good to know like where you're from, but um, we had a really tough message. It wasn't about me. It was about, protecting freedom and
Yeah.
our rights and things like that, women's rights. And so it was not about me. There wasn't a picture of myself anywhere. And my campaign was like, just so you know, like this is not going to be about you. And I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And people actually were kind of shocked that they're like, you should put your, picture on something, or talk about your bio. And I'm like, no, I've already done that. I've lost twice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I also learned that too, like, how to pivot messaging and how to win. And I did the third time.
Do you think that you obviously learned, right? You obviously learned some stuff from the first two attempts.
Mhm.
Do you think the stuff that you learned, because you're smart enough to pay attention to it, made you sort of double down on doing things the way you did it the third time?
I think I remained even more true to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you have to like repeat what you believe in for 4 years straight,
Yeah.
either you believe it or you don't.
Yeah.
And people can see right through that.
Right.
Voters are not stupid.
Yeah.
They can tell if you're fake or not.
Yeah.
So I also learned, you had a lot of people in your ears. I see where a lot of failures happen, even in life, campaign. What I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't really believe something, it eventually will show. You don't put the time in, you don't put the effort in, you don't try, and that people can see through that.
Mm.
So I learned for sure how to be really true to myself, whether people like that or not.
What sort of things? What it's turning into an interview,
I was gonna say,
but
oh, this is interesting.
But
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because something like what you've done
Hmm.
is very public,
Hmm.
right? A lot of I see a lot of people that they're sort of afraid to fail,
Take
but what they're
risks.
doing is very private. It's like it's not
Yeah,
really like this.
that's true. That's a good point.
The stage isn't very large.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Because you're talking about
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to run this 5K. I mean, no, nobody. I mean,
Really,
nobody really
truly.
cares. Yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
like if you don't like finish it in the time you want, like what in the grand scheme of things, like it's a
Yeah.
pretty small stage, right? But
Right.
what you did was, I mean, you were trying to get everyone in the area to know who you
Pretty,
are.
pretty visible.
Like the whole point is to be public.
Pretty.
So that's why I find it interesting because it's a lot more public than most things. So what sort
Hmm.
of
That's a good point.
so you went through the first two. One was a larger scale,
First one
maybe
was
because
the city council was at large. So the,
okay,
the first one was
it's
a
much larger.
district
Yeah.
and
Okay.
larger, and then kind of yeah.
I mean, so what sort of things did you do in terms of like
Mm,
self-examination to like
mm.
come to terms with what you didn't work? You know what I mean? Was it as simple as like, well,
Um,
I didn't win, so back to the drawing board, or what?
mm, I listen to people who have actually done it and won.
Mhm.
That's a good start.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
right.
I don't claim to know everything. I don't claim to know everything in government. I don't claim to know how everything works. I
Mhm.
don't. My ideals might and ideas might change as I learn, but
Yeah.
that's what you're supposed to do,
Right.
right? So yeah, I lost, and I
It's a good skill to be able to learn and
I think so,
change your perspective.
and I kind of hate the phrase "you don't fail." What is it? If you fail, you learn. If you win, whatever that phrase
Well, I
is.
don't lose. I either win or I learn.
Yes,
Yeah.
I kind of hate it, but it's kind of true at the same time.
Yes.
It's very true, but
It's not really a statement you should say out loud. It's one you just kind of
we should
say in your head.
you should do it. But I do think that back to your comment, I didn't think about it, but um, like taking risk, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, I was at an event 2 nights ago, and a senator who I admire a lot, and she's Republican, and she talked a lot about taking risk
Mm.
and putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's all relative.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's all relative. Maybe doing a karate competition for the first time is like a absolute huge deal for me. And actually, that was terrifying for me. And
Mhm.
that was more scary for me than it was running for office.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. It's
Okay.
terrifying. Because like I think like being a politician or whatever, it's a kind of it feels like it's not a persona to me because it's really who I am, but it's like it's a hat I wear.
Right.
It's not who I am.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of how I see it.
Okay.
But yeah, I listened. So the after the second, I'm like, well, that didn't work. So I listened to people who had done it before and been successful.
Mhm.
So I was like, why the f not?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm constantly learning. So that's how it should be, I think. So even though
Okay.
I won, I learned more winning than I did. That's not true, but in a different way.
Yeah.
But I just listened to people who knew better.
Hmm.
I'm not doing better, but at the same time, holding my principles because I did not change who I was
Right.
ever, and they had to adjust around that.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. And people get mad at me. I'm like, what? I mean, it's my name on the ballot. It's not yours.
Right.
I appreciate your help,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah. So I mean, it takes a certain level of what's the word in the notes here is resilience,
mhm,
right? So what? I mean, what is that?
yeah.
What was it that made you do it the third time?
Well, I mean, I did it out of that in that case, just out of sheer necessity
Mm,
because no one had they weren't the place to run
mm,
for that position. So I was like, why not?
yeah.
I'm living here.
Yeah. I've got all this infrastructure built up.
I have the infrastructure. I have
Yeah.
amazing supporters who've been with me since
Yeah.
day one.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of a game. I say a game, but it's kind of like a game of addition when it comes to running for office and
Okay.
securing votes. Like you build, and it just happened that the person I was running against was kind of going the opposite direction. So
Sure.
it was
Sure.
kind of a perfect storm. But I had spent 4 years building that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's not something you could just like decide on a Tuesday. I'm gonna go do this and
Unless
start up from scratch.
unless you have a lot of
I mean,
money.
you could, sure.
I mean, there have been people who ran for city council here that literally just wrote a $200,000 check from
Right. I mean,
themselves.
that's pretty common in the world of politics for a
But
politician to just.
but I will say they lost. And if
Hmm.
you think about it, if you don't have that support, and I hate to talk about money when it comes to this, but that's that's how
Sure.
our
That's how our
campaign
government
that's how
works.
government
For
works.
sure.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
But think about it, like even if like you had 1,000 people give you $5,
Hmm.
that's more votes than you writing yourself a check for $200,000 when you're going to vote for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like
Totally.
you have to have that support, financial support too, even
Yeah.
if it's $1, $5.
Right.
It means a lot. So,
Well, back to that.
um,
Back to the word
but
resilience, though. Yeah.
resiliency.
What? I mean, you invoke martial arts.
Mhm.
Um, I think martial arts in that world in that path. I mean, resilience is one of the. I mean, if you were going to have like four tenets, resilience would be one of them. You
Mhm.
have to have some level of that to make any sort of headway
How do you see
in that
that?
world.
Like, how do you see what would be a specific? I'm asking you just because preparing someday test for my black belt. I'm just asking you. What do you see as a possible setback in karate? Like that you would need resilience.
Well, so for example, and I think this is universal in any good. If you, it sounds like I'm talking about myself, but if you are training with anyone worth their salt, right? They are going to put you in scenarios where you will fail,
Mm.
right? But not in a giant crash and burn way,
Mhm.
in tiny little micro failures. Like every
Mhm.
class, you're going to experience some level of failure.
Mhm.
In karate, and what we do. Let's just take
Mm.
one realm of it. You practice your kata, and
Mhm.
some element isn't right,
Mhm. That's true. Yeah, okay.
and it gets fixed, and you learn to deal with that. You learn to deal with the critique. You learn to deal with I just
That's
did it
true.
wrong. You learn to deal with doing it in front of people wrong, and
Right.
and overcoming that fear.
Mm.
Jiu-jitsu, you get submitted,
Right.
and it's those
Yeah.
you get submitted over and over and over until one day you don't,
Mhm.
and you're like, ooh,
I can actually do.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe it's sparring. You lose and lose and lose and lose and lose.
Mhm.
Nobody really loses in sparring, but um, you're not very good, and then one day you're like,
You can land a
oh,
punch on
I'm
somebody.
not that bad anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's I think martial arts is
Hmm.
sort of you know it rides on the shoulders of a lot of resilience training.
Okay, I see that. I was thinking like you fail a test, a rank test,
That would be,
which is like probably a huger thing.
I think so, and I think if you are coached and prepared properly, you wouldn't be in a scenario where you would.
Yeah.
But I mean, different people walk a different
Mm.
path.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could be the type of person that,
Mm.
you're not very open and communicative, and then that's
Mm.
kind of where all that shows up. Um,
Right. Mm.
it could be there, but that's what I see that.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a political thing, there is
Mm.
a one day of the year where we go vote, and then we stay up all night and count
Mhm.
numbers, and you find out whether all the work you did worked or not. Um,
Shoot.
to build and build and build and build, and then either pass fail. That takes a
On
level of resilience.
a one day. Well, every day is, and we talked a lot during my campaign. Like every day had its highs and lows
Mhm,
because it moves so
mhm.
fast, you know.
Yeah,
And
very much.
so and it's kind of addicting. If that's your personality,
Yeah,
which is why I
absolutely.
love it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I kind of thrive in
Yeah,
that.
right.
Um, and trying to think 2 or 3 steps ahead and then
Mhm,
thinking of every scenario. Like I'm constantly thinking like ten different ways to
right.
do something. And especially like within a campaign, like you have to be on top of your shit
Yeah.
every day.
Do you think it's just the way you look at it?
What do you mean?
Like, it's just like, where you put I mean, because we know a lot of people who you and I alone have trained with people,
Hmm.
thousands of people, not necessarily karate, I'd say hundreds, at least 100,
Oh yeah,
who
I
have
would say so.
just not been able to overcome whatever that thing is. Whether
Yeah,
it's just their
yeah.
schedule, whether it's just their internal drive, whether it's, adversity of any
Hmm.
kind of adversity,
Hmm.
people usually crumble.
Most people.
Most people do.
We talk about that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what is it? Is it just the perspective you put things in? That
Mm,
I think it is. I think if
I think so.
you kind of have to put things in a scale, you know.
Yeah, I guess it's like it's how you frame. I think in my head, like it's how you frame things, like working out or
Mhm.
whatever. It's just something I do.
Right.
I'm not gonna let anything get in the way of that.
Mhm.
If I
Yeah.
have 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I had 20 minutes last night,
Right.
so I did a hard work. I'm like, I'm
Yep.
gonna get it in.
Yeah.
Like, I, I don't know. I just don't make excuses for myself
Yeah.
because I want to live and I said when we first started the gym, we talked a lot like, what's our ethos? Like, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Mhm.
What kind of members do we want? And I think this still remains true, but my goal with my personal training clients or members is like, listen, I want to live as long as I can on my own.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. I'm gonna do
I
the
I want to be able to go get groceries
Yeah.
and go to the bathroom and get in and out of bed myself. So to me, I think of this literally as like a very long-term thing.
Yeah.
And I don't let challenges or setbacks hold me down too much.
Mm.
You got to pivot sometimes, like
Yeah.
injuries or whatever, but I just don't see no one's going to stop me from not doing something. I don't know, like don't get in my way. I'm
Well,
very
apparently.
very like
Apparently.
very sometimes stubbornly focused on things. Um but
Well, you've never really
uh,
been one to worry too much about, at least from what I see. You don't really worry too much about what you look like to other people. I mean, obviously everyone does, but I mean, at the
well,
end of the day, you're kind of like,
yeah,
well, I'll give it a shot.
why not?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at who's running things,
Yeah.
anything's better than that.
Right.
I mean,
It's
and
the
that's anything.
Yeah. The bar's
A lot of organizations,
surprisingly the bar's pretty low.
a lot of companies,
Yeah.
a lot of nonprofits, a lot of government, a lot of whatever. They're having different perspectives. There's no one way to look at anything.
Yeah.
And so why not you? Especially when it comes to your body. Like
How much of that is confidence?
um I think quite a bit because I think you have to have confidence to be okay with failing.
Yeah.
Like I fail all the damn time. Like
Right.
I screwed up bow 2 Monday night.
Yeah.
I didn't do it completely right.
Sure.
And I'm like, "Oh shit, like I need to get in
Well,
here and
yeah.
do hours of weapons like
Yeah.
and I'll do that this weekend."
Yeah.
But it's just like, "Okay, Heather, get on your shit."
You're not getting kicked out of the program
No,
because
but
you messed up one thing.
I did one thing, but that's something I like that's a standard I put on myself.
Yeah. We talk a lot about when we get coffee or whatever. You and I often talk about like ego and arrogance
Mhm.
and confidence and how they're all related,
They are.
but they're not exactly the same thing.
I know that's
And
hard.
some of it is a tool set
Yeah.
that you can sort of deploy when you need to, and some of it is like
Yeah.
to be avoided.
So, where is that line between confidence and ego?
Yeah. And then the
That's
flip side of it
that's
is I think we're talking about the flip side of it is fear. Like the
yeah.
fear of failure
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
Not because this is what Aaron and I were talking about the other day. It's not necessarily fear, because there are different types of fear. There's fear of failure, but there's also like fear of falling out of an airplane.
Yeah,
It's a
fear of like
very
death. Like
That's a
it's
different
just
thing. That's not what we're talking
right.
about. We're talking
Yeah.
about like that thing that makes you not take that step
Mhm.
because of
Mhm.
ego, arrogance, and confidence, and in whatever
Mhm.
direction those things are.
Mhm.
If it's like a Venn diagram,
If you think about like I'm just
you kind of want it to be like the perfect mix.
yeah. I wonder if to me it seems and maybe it is a little bit of ego, but in order to like get better at something, typically you need to be around people who know more than you.
Hmm. Right.
For instance, like maybe you want to go for your next job or promotion
Yeah.
and you
Right.
don't know how to get there.
Right.
You just sit there and be like, well, I don't know how to do this. Or do you like go to your manager or mentor and be like, listen, like this is my plan. How do I do
Yeah. How
this?
do I get there?
Like, how do I do this?
Right. Give me some steps.
Yeah. Or say, hey, I'm really shitty at running,
Mhm.
coach. Like, how do I get better at running? We're probably gonna say go fucking run. But
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
but maybe
A little simpler than you
like,
think.
hey, let me write a month program for you. Do this and I'll write you more.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're not gonna do it. But um
Yeah.
you gotta lead a horse to water. But if they're asking for help,
Yeah.
well, you need to ask for help. But you need to like understand that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's where ego and like having the confidence to go to someone who's knows more than you is that's
Mhm.
that can be a little scary.
Mhm. It's amazing, isn't it? That there's
It
so much
is.
into this stuff.
There is
Um.
so many lines
Well, like
to cross.
I always think about it because before doing any of the martial arts or CrossFit stuff or any of that, I was still am a graphic designer, and So when I entered the industry back in 1996,
Using easels and
97,
pencils.
yeah, we were. No, the internet was in its infancy. We
Yeah.
were learning how to put things on the internet. So
That's
there was
crazy.
there was a certain amount, and then as I started my company 20 years ago, building websites, you need a certain amount of ego and arrogance when someone comes to you and says, I need this thing,
Yeah.
and you go, sure, we'll figure it out, knowing full well
Never done
you
it
have
before.
no idea what you're talking about.
That happens a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
It's kind of like you're building the bus and putting the wheels on at the
yeah,
same time.
it's
You're
an
like,
industry where I've been
yeah.
lucky enough to be able to do that, because in certain industries, say healthcare, although sometimes they kind of do that.
Yeah.
But,
I would, yeah. Mhm.
so maybe that's not a good analogy, but
I don't think that happens very often, though. They're not
yeah,
going in there and like developing a new thing for a brain tumor or something on the
yeah,
fly.
yeah.
Anyway.
But well, I don't know. Maybe surgery. They're just like, I don't know. We'll cut it out and see if they die.
Oh, shit.
But you get my point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's one where I was kind of able to do that, but still, the stakes were there. I mean, I had to get paid. I had
Sure.
to do the thing in order to get paid. And if I got halfway into it and realized,
I can't do this.
shit, I can't do it, like, I don't get paid, and I make people mad because they've been waiting for months and weeks for me to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount
Mhm.
of that you needed, but then you also needed a certain amount of humility to, like, ask people for help,
Mhm.
to do, it's part of the research, to ask for more time, or
Mhm.
all that stuff. Yeah, that's an amazing thing, and when you think about applying that to, like,
Yeah.
other areas.
And you're giving up control a little bit too.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it yourself. I mean, I do know people who like are a
Right,
one-stop shop,
right.
but you have to work with other people.
Yep.
So you gotta trust other people. So you're
And
kind of relinquishing
then in
some
the
of
back of
that
your mind,
control.
they don't know what they're doing either.
No, 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 no. You're all just kind of figuring it out. Yeah.
Especially developers.
Oh
Um,
gosh, the worst. I'm just kidding.
so yeah, so I mean, what is that thing? What is that thing that lets some people sort of take that step, and then it like freezes some people right in their
Mhm.
tracks? You know, I think it's that. I think it's an equal mix of
Scared.
arrogance, ego, and humility. Or
Mhm.
or you want to ego, you could use confidence. I mean, it could be the same thing, but
Mhm.
I think it is.
Scared.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word ego gets thrown around
Scared.
a lot in a negative way,
Yeah.
but
Ah,
I think it actually can be a good tool.
I think it's also who you hang out with.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
for
if you
sure.
have people just like playing video games all
For
day
sure.
and you just sit on your ass and drink all night
Yeah,
and
for sure.
watch Netflix, like that's gonna be really hard to change your
Mhm.
how you put your time. That's very hard to do. Imagine living in like a friend circle or family like that.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be very hard to
It
change.
would, yeah, and they're
So,
pulling you down at the same time.
but that's your choice. I mean, going back to like campaigns, I could say that. I could say that and not with the people I was working with because I had amazing help. But like I've seen some folks and I'm like, they're just like falling apart. And I'm like, that's your choice.
Mm.
And maybe it's kind
Yeah,
of blunt, but like, that's up to you.
right.
You are in control of your own destiny in that area. Like
Yeah.
you cut them loose. Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, how many times have we had people, well, here's an example, like, a lot of times, and I'm sure you've dealt with this too, and it's along the
Mhm.
same lines of what you're talking about, where you're coaching someone, on their nutrition,
Mm.
and then they're good for a couple of days, and then they say, "Well, went to a family thing,
Oh, yeah.
and then I didn't wanna eat their, pasta salad,
They
and they all got mad at
get
me,
mad at me.
so I
Yeah.
ate it."
Yeah.
Like that, it's like peer pressure, but, like, negative. It's like they're pulling me down, you know?
Some people don't want you to do well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that includes your family.
yeah, and
And
it might not be conscious. It might not be like they
no.
consciously want you to get fat or be
Well, no,
bad,
no, no.
but it's just like a subconscious, like, their emotions, because you're rejecting this one thing, like,
Right. Well, that's their own ego. I mean,
yeah, sure.
there's a reason why I talk to certain family members and not. You know? I mean, Either you're with me or
Right.
you're not. What's that?
Either you're with me or against me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's was it Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
song.
so I want to talk about resilience, though. So I mean, you have to be pretty resilient to give it a third go.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what are some ways? I mean, it could be your physical training or the mental work or whatever. What are some ways that you build resilience? Or is it something that you even do like consciously?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because we both like David Goggins a lot.
We do.
We both sort of call out David Goggins a lot,
Yeah, I guess
and
it's kind of.
he will preach resilience.
I think it's kind of getting a little hard. Well, he says stay hard,
He
and
says stay hard, yeah.
I don't really know that, but it's kind of just been like having the mindset of
He talks about callousing the mind.
yeah, I think that's it. Like it's just kind it's not saying it's not doing something flippantly,
Yeah,
not taking it seriously, but at the
Mhm.
same time it's just like fuck it.
yeah,
So kind of like why not?
yeah,
Let's do it. And
right.
then but then it's also giving it your all.
Yeah. Oh, you have. Yeah. Well, that's a minimum.
I mean, but that's the only way you're going to ever get better. And then there's always times just to show up. That's fine. But it is definitely just being like, nothing is going to get in your way.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of spirit I think I have of just like, nothing's going to stop me.
Hmm.
And if there is, then I'll just step over it and keep walking,
Mm.
you know?
Hmm.
And then also just understand that you're going to have external
But you,
people and things try to stop you.
right?
And to me, it's a
They're
lot of
the enemy.
well,
I mean,
I
we're talking about mindset here.
I mean, it's a lot of visualization.
Yeah.
I think I've shared some visualization things
Mhm.
that I think about
Mhm.
when I, go into the state house or am working on projects or putting my neck out there for
Mhm.
some pretty controversial things or
Mhm.
whatever. Not even controversial, but just like calling people out.
Right.
People don't like that after all.
No, they do not.
People don't like that. But
They don't like you to mess with their world.
what I think is um it's been very interesting my short time to see that if you do stay on that path and not let that get you down and speak the truth and keep moving forward is that shit comes back around.
Yeah.
And it has so fast. And like just
Yeah.
the 9 months I've been serving, I'm like, oh wow. Like it, and I'm not gonna talk about specifics or name names, but like
Yeah.
people have been forced to resign.
Yeah. It does.
People are being, you know, looked into.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all these things. It's all coming back, and I think just being truthful and being confident in your position is helpful, but not let things get in your way. It's hard to do. I think not for me, but I'm sure it's hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't always been like that though.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, in high school, I was like the quietest person in school.
Yeah.
But I was very observant.
Mm.
But I was also friends with everybody.
Right.
So I just kind of like talked to everybody. It was like, oh, okay, what's going on? Talk to the emos. I was also a jock and in chorus, but I sat with all the people who dressed in black all day. I was just like, I was kind of like in every kind of group.
Right.
I found people interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why I brought that up.
No,
but
it's fine.
I think it was just very reserved. I
I
didn't
think-
know who I was.
I think we're talking about failure, and we're specifically talking about fear of failure. I
Mhm.
think authenticity
My
plays
gosh.
a big part in that, because I know a lot of people,
Mhm.
and I've asked people to sit down with me like we are right now and talk, and they won't. And I think
Mm.
honestly, and not again, we're not naming names, but I
Mhm.
think honestly, it's because that balance that they strike every day between who they really are and who they try to
Ooh,
pr- produce to the world,
for sure.
they can't manage that for an extended amount of time. And I think
Yeah,
that's a thing with people.
that's a good point.
You've got to see that every day in politics.
I do. And
It's got to be exhausting.
No, I actually find it kind of encouraging because like Tuesday night, this this event, and I gave a talk, and I had people coming up to me afterwards being like, "Thank you for saying that.
Mm.
Thank you for saying, what everyone's thinking. Thank you. Like, I'm going to do that too." So to me, it's kind of a lot of times what you're thinking and not saying is what other people are thinking and not saying.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Sure.
I found that
Huh.
in politics. Like a lot of times people are thinking the same dang thing.
Mm.
But it just takes that spark of,
Right.
I guess
Somebody just saying it.
being, I guess, believing in yourself
Yeah.
and you are a good person,
Right.
not trying to inflict harm on anybody. And, but you're trying to do what's right
Yeah.
and just
Mm-hmm.
and equitable and all those things. And if you can check off those things, then probably what you're thinking is right on track
Mm.
and what should be said and what we need more in the world.
Right.
So whoever that is, they should just come on here and just speak from the heart. And I remember first I was told from Allison, shoot, I'm like, well, what do I do? It's like it's dark, I can't go canvassing. She's like, you need to sit with your ideas and your thoughts for these topics and just start writing them out.
That's probably a good exercise.
Well, I just sat there at a screen being like, shit, like, I don't know what
What do I
I don't
think?
know what, and I didn't know what. And
Yeah.
I think that's the whole part of like campaigning and having
Right.
to express what you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
so many times
Yeah.
that we're not used to doing that.
No, we're not. And we're definitely not used to being tested on that stuff either.
Right.
That's what
My
I've had
gosh.
I've had on this show and another show I produce, we talk to entrepreneurs and we often
Mm,
talk about
wow.
that term entrepreneur. And one of the it was me and Shakis. He's been on this show a
Mhm.
few times. One of my favorite people to talk to. Um,
Same. My cousin.
we talk about that word, and he was saying, and I'll get it wrong. I have to go back and listen to it. He was saying something about like, well, he doesn't really consider you an entrepreneur until you have tried something and messed it up, and then have tried something else
Yeah.
because you need those things you were just talking about,
Mhm.
like sitting down, figuring out what is it I do believe in,
Right.
and then carrying that.
Yeah.
Like that's step one,
Yeah. That's hard to
and
do.
then experience is then living that and having to defend it,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
or not defend it, but exemplify it. Like,
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you've agreed to like work out and eat well, but like when you're home on a Saturday night,
Mhm.
do you drink a beer and order that pizza? When you're working on your goals,
Yeah.
like nobody's looking. What are you doing? Like that sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
carrying that is one thing, but then living it when
Mhm.
everyone is telling you that's the wrong way to live,
Well,
you're like, no, I think it's the right way to live.
this is like so true. It's being battle tested.
Yeah.
And I mean battle tested like, and thank you for
Yeah.
those
For
who
real.
fight for our country. But like
Yeah.
imagine going out to close to 10,000
Yeah.
doors
Oh, yeah.
canvassing for a campaign
Mhm.
and having to tell what you believe in
Yeah.
10,000 times to people
And defend it.
and defend it
Because I'm sure there's some crazy people.
about half the time.
Yeah.
No, they're gonna question you.
Sure. That's why
I
you're
mean, I'm
going
at the door. I'm asking for
why you're
their I mean,
you come to my house, I'm gonna ask some questions.
hey,
That's-
good. And
yeah.
I you learn after a certain time. Like at
Yeah.
first I was like, gosh, I hope they don't talk to me. I'm being honest. I'm like, I hope
Mhm.
they just let me talk and then I just move along. I gotta
Yeah.
move along.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to talk to them. And I try to like,
Mhm.
and then eventually I leaned into it. And now, I mean, I can talk to anybody and like I'll just be like, "Brr, brr, brr, brr," like just being like
Mhm.
berarded. And I'll just sit there and be like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I can take a lot. I can take a lot now. I can take a beating physically and like
Right.
mentally when it comes to defending what you believe in
Mhm.
because I've had to do it
Well, I mean, that's
so many times.
well, that's your thing then. I mean, that's
So
what we're
many
talking about.
times. Yeah, I didn't think about that until
You are a door-to-door canvassing Goggins.
I am. But it was interesting in the talk I gave Tuesday night. I had a couple lines in there about entrepreneurship, and I
Uh-huh.
took it out because I'm like, no one's gonna understand what that is. But this is what I had in there, but I took it out. I said something like, someone can have a good idea, someone can have a maybe for like a neighborhood or for government or whatever, but that's fine. But you have to be able to execute it. And that's what I've like, proven in my time. And I'm proud to say that, like, you have to be able to execute.
Right.
You can't just like having a great idea is saying you want to, lose 20 pounds and whatever.
Yeah.
But then
It's good.
you have to do the work.
Yeah. Being inspired is great.
That's great. That's a great first step.
Yeah.
But then, so I was like, please have great ideas.
Yeah.
And people will talk on Facebook all the time and like things like that.
But will you do
We've talked a
anything?
lot about that. Just garbage dump on Facebook.
And how many books have you read where you didn't do a damn thing that the book said you should do?
Right.
I mean, most books.
Most
yeah.
books.
I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
You know?
But then do it. Actually follow steps to do it.
Put something in place.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. But that's entrepreneurship. Everybody's got a great idea.
Hey. And that's
but
what I was like.
Execution is 90%. Yeah.
Like I saw my idea for Vesta startup. I still claim as my own because no one else has done it yet.
Yeah.
So I was like, someone do this, please, because I would like to use that myself.
Right.
This app.
Right.
That I'll eventually do in my spare time, but it's so you can register for gifts at local stores.
Yeah, that was a cool idea.
It's still a great idea.
Yeah.
No one's done it. Every once in a while, like once a year, I'll go and look like, let's just see. And I'll kind of poke around. I'm like, nope, like no one's done it yet.
Yeah.
Like, because it's going to be really hard to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of groundwork.
A lot of groundwork. But I'm like, please, someone do it. Someone execute it.
Yeah.
Great idea.
That's the thing, right?
Not execute it.
Yeah.
And I admit that I have not done it.
Do you think? I mean, you were talking about that, like that, the door-to-door, one-on-one. In a way, you're sort of also. I mean, the first 2 attempts.
Yeah.
At running for. I mean, it's sort of like if you look at it through the lens of a startup.
Yeah.
It's sort of like fail fast, fail often. I mean, on a micro scale.
It kind of is, yeah.
And you're kind of like experimenting in a way, like learning you're not going to change who you are, but the way you tell that story has to change and evolve, right? To make sure it's the right pattern, the right message. Do you feel, and this is not necessarily related, this is a political question now, but it sure, and I'm just going to make a statement, it sure seems like when you look at the internet and all the crazy people in office, it sure seems like they lack that. Like they should probably do some door-to-door work.
Yeah, they haven't probably knocked a door since
you can kind of tell
their first or second election, or they'll go out like once a year and knock their cousin's door down the street, get a picture.
But you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
You can kind of hear it.
They're out of touch.
Yeah.
And I say that a lot.
Yeah.
They're completely out of touch.
Right.
And just the way
and I get it. There's like a security issue versus a thing, but you could make it. You could do it.
That's your job.
You could do it.
I'm sorry. I don't care if you're a congressman or, or a city council person.
Yeah, it could be done.
At least some. Like, I understand like your scope of like who you represent.
You can call people on a phone.
You could do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. I mean, you see that from your, especially federal elected officials, like just completely at it, like just zero.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's all one-way communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're in the possible brink of a government shutdown, and like I know friends of friends who may not get deployed.
Yeah.
They're not going to get a paycheck after next week.
Right.
I mean, this shit's like literally happening, and it's all because of political pride, the ego, for sure.
Well, for sure.
I mean, immensely. They're not concerned about, potentially millions of people not getting a paycheck because of their party or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Really makes me mad.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring that up.
What I'm saying is, I'm not gonna go down any further, but just add a touch. Like they need to go knock a couple thousand doors.
Yeah, probably change their perspective.
And tell people what you really want to do to this certain thing and one specific topic.
Right.
Go knock 2,000 women's doors and
see how it holds up.
See how it holds up.
Probably not well.
Not very well.
Probably gonna hear some stuff.
Yeah. Which is probably why they don't.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we could. That's a whole different podcast. Of
my gosh! Because then they're saying certain things because they get money from certain people. It's all a cycle.
Or the people who control what stories they hear.
That too.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
my gosh, there's so many.
Yeah, there's
That's a
like
whole other
lots of
podcast.
levers.
Oh my gosh.
So
It gets me mad.
so anyway, in the entrepreneur world,
Hmm.
fail early, fail often, but always fail forward. It's John Maxwell.
Oh.
That's the kind of coined a lot of the
Hmm.
agile and lean in the software development world.
Yeah.
Where some of that comes from.
I guess that's very true.
But here's where I'm going with this.
Hmm.
And we think about authenticity, and I'm specifically thinking about, you running for office over the past 4 years,
Hmm.
thinking about authenticity, thinking about that concept,
Hmm.
failing fast, failing often, failing forward. At what point was it you were focused on just a short-term goal versus like a vision of who you want to be? And do you
Oh
think,
my gosh.
and that could be politics, but it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
And there's a martial arts angle there too.
Hmm.
A lot of fear of failure stems. It's like you feel it most when it's like in that moment, like right
Yeah.
before you
Oh,
step on stage.
yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find in those instances, if I put it in the scope of like my life, it becomes smaller,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And that was a long-winded way of getting there, I think.
Hmm.
Thanks for letting me talk. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, is that something you're conscious of? Do you use that?
Um, I think so. I
Someone, a
mean,
friend of mine actually taught me that a long time ago because
yeah.
I was really nervous. I was giving this talk and was really nervous about it. And he was like, 30 minutes after you're done, they're not going to remember who the hell you were. Don't worry about it, bro.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, he's right. They don't care, you know,
I think.
because I was the slot right before lunch too. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure it
You're
was,
always
they
the
were like,
person right
shut the
between
fuck
food.
up. I'm
Yeah.
hungry. Yeah.
Food or drinks.
Yeah.
That's like the
Yeah.
worst time, or bathroom break.
Yeah.
Waste time. I think I'll just use the example, the talk I gave Tuesday night.
Mm.
I had a planning call with my team, just say, hey, like this is what I want to bring across. This is my long-term goal for why I'm going to be talking about why I want to be talking about this. Because I have like a plan, and I'm not going to share it now, but like for a longer term project, I'll call it. And those are the people I need to be talking to. So I wanted to lay the groundwork for that.
Hmm.
So there was some definitely long-term like planning into that, even for a 5-minute talk with this, because I had a captive audience. I'm like, why the hell not? So I had a plan. We talked through it, like an hour call about this 5-minute talk and how important it was. And then writing the talk and then practicing the talk. And then at that point you have a plan, you have a long-term plan,
Hmm.
and then you execute it. It's 5
Right.
minutes.
Right.
It's literally 5 minutes. You've practiced it. It's accomplishing it's one step closer to your long-term goals.
Hmm.
You're Then you can live in the moment and you can enjoy it, if that makes sense.
100%.
So I think it's as simple as the things that even like I do
Yeah.
as a politician. It may seem just like kind of, oh, look at her just reacting.
Yeah.
No, I've been,
Right.
that's been months. Like I've been planning for that.
Mm.
So it seems easy, but it's not.
Yeah. You're waiting for that.
Same with working out or whatever. Like
Hmm.
like, oh, well, Heather's always been like that. Shit, no. So it's because of the work that you don't see. It's like LeBron James. He works out so much.
Right.
He practices.
Hmm.
And then he shows up and he hits the buzzer. Like it's not just happenstance.
Yeah. That's the, age old, like we're a success overnight success
A
or
lot of
whatever.
people think that.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I was just reading a story about a dude he's in the top like 5 most popular podcasts. And
oh,
he was like, yeah, I just got there. But, I've been doing this podcast 3 days a week for the past 8 years.
yep.
It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't,
Yeah.
he's like, in 5 of those, I didn't make a dime. And it's
Right.
like, wow,
Right.
that's a
Right.
hard slog.
Mhm.
But,
But
in perspective of like his lifelong work, it's not really, doesn't really mind having a bad episode now and then.
yeah. Well, you're always learning. You're being resilient
Yeah.
and adapting. You know, you're not taking anything for granted either. That's another big thing. Is like not taking moments where you can learn and use something to make yourself better later on
Yeah.
or help you with your goals later on.
Right.
Like take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's why like for me, like being a teacher or, instructor, sensei or whatever, like I'm always looking for things that can be used to help someone.
Hmm.
That's really the guise of it,
Yeah.
because it really helps me.
Sure.
Like I consume it first,
I mean,
it's very selfish,
but
but in the end it's given.
at the same time, we respect that you do it too.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
I mean, right? You want someone who works out and does what you
Right.
nothing worse than someone telling you how to do something
Yeah.
that they've never done before.
Yeah.
Like my volleyball coach in
Right.
college.
Right.
Loved him. Never played volleyball a day in his life,
Right.
but he was a collegiate 2 coach. I'm like, wait, what? How did this happen? There are
Like,
plenty of other women who have played volleyball here
yeah.
who'd be phenomenal coaches.
Right. Why
You
are you
know?
here? Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that's
anyway,
a whole
there was
thing.
always a tinge of like,
Hmm.
I would beat your ass every day.
Yeah.
You know?
That happens too.
I think that's why he had us do a lot of football drills.
It's what he knows.
Because and he was good at them.
Well, there's got a little time left. There's these 4 things, and I wanted to just run them by you. You haven't seen them yet. Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
And it's sort of like ways and techniques and things
Hmm.
to help you sort of frame things in ways of practicing that can help you maybe overcome, if there's something where you have this fear of failure what's keeping you from trying something.
Mhm.
I thought these were 4 cool things, and they're worded weird, so I'm going to try to like.
Interesting.
So one of them, and probably the easiest one, is do regular retrospectives to learn from
Mm.
your failures and even your successes.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yeah.
I don't do it enough.
I tend to do it when I have an uneasy feeling about something.
Okay, explain.
Like, let me try to think of a certain example. It's a lot of times like the way I said something to someone. I think you talked about that. You had some of that, like just you're like, "Ooh, did I say the wrong? Did I say it right? Did
Well,
I do
I
this?"
personally have anxiety over that
Yeah, yeah,
specific
yeah.
world
So
thing.
I tend to get like pings, and that's like gut check, kind of like okay,
Yeah.
and then I'll talk to 5 people, and I'll be like, "What do you think about this? Like, what do
Yeah.
you think about?" And they're like,
Just get a general consensus.
basically, I'm a crowdsourcer.
Yeah.
Another
Right.
entrepreneur thing
Yeah.
is like, I'm like, "Hey, what'd you think about? What'd you think? What'd you think?" And
Right.
then I'll either they'll be like, "That's pretty shitty," or that was great.
I was a dick.
And I was
Sorry.
like, fuck. So
I mean, yeah.
then you learn how to, adjust,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
I forget the original question.
There's-
Actually. Or the original. I forget what it was.
Yeah, but that in a sincere way.
Yeah.
Not like, hey, lazy web, what's the best place to have dinner? That's not what we're talking about.
Oh no.
We're talking about sincerely caring
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
doing those
Mm.
retrospectives or crowdsourcing, whatever it is, or pre-perspective. You could do that too.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that
Mm.
could help you. That could help you
Mhm.
kind of review something that you didn't like or made you feel uncomfortable. Another
Mhm.
one is this is kind of a startup-y world thing, but make a proposal and ask for objections.
Mm.
And it's maybe a different way to frame something. So
Mhm.
not necessarily, because a lot of times you'll show someone something. Maybe it's something you made or you wrote or
Mm.
a decision like, I want to go do this. And you're really looking for validation. You're really looking for that
Yeah.
person or the people you're asking to be like, attaboy. But sometimes they go, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And then you're like crushed, right? And then that
Yeah.
can spiral or whatever. Or maybe you're afraid of that. You're afraid of not getting the validation.
Mm.
I think this is a cool way to look at it in terms of like pitch it,
Mhm.
expecting their objections, and then you're responding expecting it. Like not like being negative minded about
Yeah.
something, but like, like I expect objectives,
Objections.
objections
Yeah.
so that I can use them to make my thing better. and
Yes.
that's why I'm asking you to get those things to make the
Yes.
thing better.
Yes.
I mean,
I get
I
that.
think we all do that.
I get that.
I mean, if you're smart, I think you
But I think I do. I think of a couple people who they just like they're like "Do, do, 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 do," they're like here it is, great. I'm like, ooh,
and all they
no.
want is a pat on the back. Yeah, that's really what they want.
That comes with it. I think humbling a little bit
Yeah.
to know that you're gonna be like, no.
This is probably very arrogant of me, but something over the years, past couple years, I honestly just don't ask people. If like I kind of and that's why I put this one on the list
Well,
because I do that where
well,
if I'm like if I just want validation from this, I just don't ask people.
but you do. We've talked about some stuff about this.
Maybe
But I think this
maybe
is
I'm
what
not being authentic right now.
you're not. Because you've asked me for but maybe you're looking for validation. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe you were, and I didn't
Sometimes I
know.
don't know what the hell I'm asking
I
for.
that too.
Yeah.
I do the same
Yeah.
thing.
'Cause I'm not very
But I think
smart, so I just
it's also like awareness.
yeah.
Like to know
Yeah.
why you're doing something.
Yeah.
I used to do it all the time. I used to need
That's
a
true.
ton of
Yeah.
and I didn't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Because I need this
Right.
thing in
And
my
then once
life.
you recognize that,
Yeah.
then you might do it less or you might nothing worse than,
Or at least realizing you need it.
right.
That's a thing I have to
Right.
fill.
It's kind of like when we're doing the iron yard together, um, trying to teach folks how to do their own
Yeah.
troubleshooting at first before coming to like a
Right.
10-year
Just
professional.
asking me. Yeah.
Like Google,
Yeah. Spend some time on this first.
think about it. Like
Expend some energy.
and then come.
Yeah.
So I think that time gets a little shorter, hopefully.
Yeah.
Or the less you
Yeah. You can get
need
faster
that.
seeing things.
And then you also learn.
All right.
Yeah.
I agree. Along those lines, I think the next two, I thought these were cool. This might help somebody. Like looking at the way you look at something. So
Mm.
decisions are experiments that are expected to prove you wrong. So look at the way you're making decisions about things.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to, decide whether to do something or not do it, look at that actual choice between those two things as the experiment.
Yeah.
Like, what if I do it? What if I don't do it? And then let me do both. Because not doing it's really easy. You just don't do it. But then, like, doing this is like a thing to see if this is a thing I want to do. Right. Just kind of changing the frame of
Yeah.
the way you're, you know,
Yeah. I
like,
guess like being more playful about stuff.
yeah,
a
not
little
living in
bit.
this like I think we were talking about, society in general, but like I feel like everybody lives in this like binary world now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking politics. So you could talk about left and right and how it's like
Yeah.
everything's pushed out of the middle, but like
Yeah.
I think that's kind of affecting us, or maybe that's a result of how we're living. I'm not sure, but like
Man.
everything's not yes or no. It's like you're not right or wrong necessarily. Like, you can sort of live in the middle. You don't have to have it all or nothing.
And that's kind of like I don't want to say again like not taking things too seriously, but
Yeah.
like
I mean, right.
um
Like you can try it and not be good at it the first time you try it.
yeah,
It's okay.
and that's okay.
No one cares.
I mean, you're probably going to care the most unless it's like but yeah, it is like definitely a gray area, but um I do think it is just like looking at things in a certain way to I guess to me I like learning. So
Yeah.
like just going in
Right.
it, leaning into that,
Yeah.
like leaning into why you're doing something. I guess you're going back to your why. Like
Yeah.
have a reason for
A larger
doing
scale
this.
reason.
And then stuff you just don't want to do.
Yeah.
You gotta frame it differently.
I think so.
Like,
Well, then that's the last one on the list was two-way door versus a one-way door, which is
mm,
most decisions in life are reversible. I
yeah,
mean, we're talking about most, we're not,
yeah,
there are always things that aren't reversible, but like most decisions you make, it's not a one-way door. You're not going to walk through it and never be able to come back again. I mean, you can try something and be like, well, I didn't like that, never do it again.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
that's cool too. Like look at these things that way. Like look at it in terms of like, I'm sure the first time you ran for office, you were like, God, if I lose this, you know,
No.
I'll never do this again. But clearly you didn't.
I didn't. I don't. I
You know?
never.
It's like, so what?
Well,
So I'll
no.
do it
I
again.
had some stipulations.
Sure. Well,
'Cause
of
I was
course.
kind of like, if I do this again, it's gonna be this, this, this.
Right. This is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
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 That's cool.
All three. I mean, all 3 times I had that. But the first time I was like, oh, I actually didn't know anything the first time.
Right. I mean, I think
it's
that's the
just like,
lesson.
I mean, I'm like, okay, well, but it is, putting yourself out there and whatever that is we need people's perspectives.
Mhm.
So, and that's like running for office. But I'm thinking of just like, I don't know, even working out and stuff like that. You got to put yourself out there
Yeah.
and know that, maybe doing jujitsu is not your thing.
Right.
I don't know. Just
For
do,
sure.
I
Not,
mean,
yeah.
we talk about this a lot, but just do something.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm not sure we solved everyone's problem.
that was a good talk.
Yeah. Good idea, man.
Got my brain
I hope so.
turning here.
Good. Well,
Hmm.
cool. All right. Well, I think
Hope
that's
this
a good place to stop.
I hope this helps people.
Me too.
Man.
Well, let me know. Like, if you're not signed up for the email, sign up for the email. You can go to wherever you're at. Like, I don't think you can do an Apple, but you go to Spotify or the website, whatever, and send me a note. Let me know where you have overcome failure
Yeah,
or overcome your fear of failure.
I want to read
Or
this.
if you're stuck, hit me a note. We'll read it and we'll get back with you.
Love that.
So yeah. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks for having me.